Nobody wants to talk about this, but it's easily one of the most important things that a man can ever learn. And I say man because women understand pretty much from birth the importance of something called social status and how it impacts everyone in society. Most of us become extremely aware of social status when we enter high school because it has such a profound effect on whether one person is favored and desirable while other people are not. And in high school, we are able to quickly recognize those who have great social status and those who do not. Nobody can really deny that what you would call the popular kids enjoy far more benefits as a direct result of having greater social status than their peers. One of the biggest mistakes that we tend to make is seeing reality for how we want it to be rather than how it actually is. And so, when things don't work out, we tend to blame other people or circumstances rather than looking a little bit closer at the way that we see the world. Now, if somebody gave you a treasure map and said X marks the spot, you wouldn't really have any trouble finding the treasure unless you were blind or something. And not recognizing social status and the effect that it has on yourself and everybody around you is pretty much like trying to read a treasure map while blind. Now, if we were to examine the typical popular kids in high school, something that most of us tend to assume is that these kids are popular because they are wealthy or because of something as simple as luck or destiny or some other factor that we don't know anything about. And it's true that superficial things like wealth can definitely influence your social status. But what if I told you that there is something far more important and far more effective when it comes to gaining social status yourself? Now, the hidden component, or the one thing that most people tend to miss when they try to understand why one person is popular and another is not, is something called social intelligence. Now, when given a choice, pretty much no human on the planet will tell you that they wouldn't like to be more popular or more desired by other people. In fact, tens of billions of dollars are spent every single year on cosmetic surgery and other things that people believe will make them more desirable. And as men, we tend to chase superficial things like luxury vehicles or a large bank account, all in an attempt to gain more social status or to become more desirable, not realizing that the path as superpower is actually much easier than any of us could have thought. Nobody will tell you that they don't want to be liked and respected by their peers. So the question is, how can you obtain this social status that everybody wants but few seem to ever get enough of? And the answer is really quite simple. Studies have shown that there is a strong correlation between a person's level of social status and the density of their D2 or dopamine type 2 and dopamine type 3 receptors within the brain. Dopamine type 3 receptors are located within the part of our brain that handles our feelings of motivation and the reward system. And during a study, PT scans were used to measure D2 receptors within the brain. And what they found was that people with the most social status within the group had a higher density of receptors. So put simply, the people who are most likely to develop the greatest social status within a group are those who have more receptors for dopamine to take effect within their brain. At the core, this basically means that the popular kids in high school, or popular people in general, actually have a physically different brain structure than those who are not. In other words, people with low levels of dopamine receptors frequently have low social status, and people with high levels of receptors tend to have higher social status. Previously, it was thought that personality traits were the main driver of something like social status, but studies are showing that it might actually be a difference in physical brain structure that is the main driver of social sense. So at this point, you and everybody else watching this video are probably asking yourselves, how can I ever hope to gain more social status if I can't alter the physical structure of my brain? And since scientists have yet to create something like a limitless pill, and other drugs that alter dopamine receptors have far too many unwanted side effects, there is really only one way to tip the odds in your favor. So if your ability to gain social status is based primarily on the physical structure of your brain, And since this is something that is largely based on genetics, a very powerful thing that you can do is not searching for ways to increase your dopamine receptors, but rather figuring out how to supercharge the ones that you already have. Whenever you buy a car and you want to make it go faster, typically you find ways to make more power with the engine that you already have before you do something like buy a bigger turbo or put in a different engine. Recently, I made a video about something called dopamine detox, which involves cutting out all unnecessary stimulation from your life. Today, we live in a world where all we have to do is press a button and we can instantly trigger our brain's reward system or dopamine receptors. And within seconds, we can flood our receptors with enormous amounts of dopamine that really wasn't meant to be there. Now, the problem with this is that it's not a natural thing, and our brains actually have a defense mechanism in place to keep our brain and body running smoothly or to keep them in a state of homeostasis. So when we go on a huge sugar binge or eat a bunch of ice cream or do pretty much anything else that artificially boosts the dopamine within the brain, our brain becomes completely flooded with this chemical, and the defense mechanism or homeostasis kicks in to restore balance. And the way that it restores balance is by turning down the volume of our dopamine receptors. So the more dopamine that we blast our brains with, the more our brains turn down the signal, so that we don't go to socialize or do other simple, natural, and really important activities. Our receptors are completely desensitized or not as powerful as they should be. And in terms of what this does to your dopamine receptors, things like massive amounts of sugar or looking at things that you shouldn't look at late at night, these things are no different really than an actual addiction. All of these things that cause a massive artificial and unnatural release of dopamine are causing our brain's defense mechanism to turn against us by reducing the volume of our receptors. So what ends up happening is that we get less and less pleasure from natural things like socializing, and if an activity isn't rewarding, then the reality is that we're not going to want to do it. Becoming popular or gaining social status involves nothing more than socializing more often and improving your social intelligence so that you are better with other people. And to get better at this, you need to supercharge your dopamine receptors so that you can be thoroughly rewarded from simple things like talking to other people. And if you're like most people, constantly seeking your next artificial dopamine release, then you won't have the great advantage that extroverts have because your receptors will be fried. Things like fast food, large amounts of sugar in fact, and looking at things that you shouldn't be looking at, these are all things that can trigger an unnatural release of dopamine, which greatly reduces your brain's ability to reward you for things like socializing well with other people. And these things are far more important than binge watching your favorite TV show or eating tons of fast food. So as much as possible, stay away from things that give you a quick, easy hit of dopamine, and focus your energy more towards things that are far more rewarding and natural, such as socializing and building stronger connections with other people. And over time, as your receptors begin to rebalance themselves, you will find great pleasure in simple things, such as getting better at socializing with other people. And one of the things that gives a man great social status or makes him desirable, makes other people want to be around him, is simply having great social skills or social intelligence. And it's extremely difficult to develop your social intelligence if the dopamine receptors in your brain are constantly being fried by cheap, artificial, and unnatural hits of dopamine. And with that, that's it. I hope you guys had a great 4th, and until next time, thanks for watching. First of all, once again, thank you for watching this video till the end. I have something for you. I have created the masterclass for the guys who want unlimited power and dominance in their relationships, guys who want the ability to make women fall in love with them at will, guys who want authority and dominance in their love lives and never to be seen as weak again, guys who want to get out from the dreaded friend zone and get into the lover zone, Guys who want to have choices with women and have a relationship without the drama, confusion, and headache. Guys looking to turn a casual friend or coworker into a devoted lover and get her to be physically and emotionally addicted to them. If you don't take any action to understand women in your 20s, you'll suffer heavily in your 30s. So buy it right now. It's on 50% discount buy before sales ends. Buying link in the pinned comment and description.